All right, so this math lesson comes from chapter 4, lesson 4. And we're looking at multiplying using expanded form and using a model to multiply a problem where you have a decimal times a whole number factor. So my problem that I have is 46 times 9 and 8 tenths. My first step is to rewrite the factors in expanded form. So if I have 46, to write it in expanded form is really saying 40 plus 6. And then if I take 9 and 8 tenths in expanded form, that's really saying 9 plus 8 tenths. So that's step 1, is to do expanded form. Step 2 is to create a model. So my step 2 would be the model. Now when we create a model, I have 4 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to create a box that has 4 sections in it. And what I'm going to do is on this side here, I'm going to use my 46. So I'm going to write 40 and I'm going to write the number 6. And then along the top, I'm going to use 9 and 8 tenths. So I'm going to designate this spot as 9 and this spot over here as 8 tenths. So this is creating my model. Now I need to multiply to find the area of each section. So I'm going to multiply for this box right here. I'm going to say 40 times 9. So this box is really saying 40 times 9. And I know that equals 360. Over here in this box here, this is saying 6 times 9. Because I'm taking the 6 and I'm taking the 9 and I'm multiplying them together. And I know that equals 54. Now when I come over here, I'm going to take my 40 and then my 8 tenths. So 40 times 8 tenths. And remember, back to the previous lesson, when I do this, 40 times 8 tenths, I'm forgetting about the decimal point and I'm just multiplying normally. So 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 4 is 32. And then I have another 0 here. So I'm going to bring Harry Houdini in. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 4 is 0. So then when I add them together, I get 320. But I have a decimal point here. So remember what I said about the decimal point. When you have a decimal point in your product, as one of your factors, you need to count how many place values are behind that decimal point. So I like to draw a line underneath each number, each place value that's after the decimal points. So I know that there's one place value, one number after the decimal point in this factor. And I'm going to look to my other factor, the 40, to see if there's any decimal points and numbers after it, and there's not. So in my answer down here in my product, I'm going to start by going to the number that's all the way on the right, and I'm going to start underlining it. And I only have one number underlined for my problem, so I only need one place value after my decimal point in my answer. So then I can put my decimal point right in front of it. Remember, this is going back to lesson 4.3 that we did. So really my answer is 32. 32 and 0 tenths, but because there's a 0, I don't need to write it. So then this box here is going to be 6, because I'm taking it from this side, times 8 tenths. So we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to put 8 tenths on the top though this time because it's larger than the 6. There's more numbers than the 6. So 6 times 8 is 48. Bring up my 4. 6 times 0 is 0 plus 4. Now I need to figure out where to put this decimal point in my answer. So I find my decimal point and I look to see how many numbers are located behind it. There's only one, and there's no decimal point in the number 6 and no numbers after the decimal point in the number 6. So in my answer, I need to have one number behind my decimal point. So I start with the number that's on the right and I underline it, and then I put my decimal point. So my answer here is 4 and 8 tenths. So now step 3 is to add up all of the partial products. So I have 360 plus, I'm going to go down here, 54 plus 32 plus 4 and 8/10. I'm going to add them together. So remember, if there's nothing above it, you can add a decimal point and you can add your zero, your imaginary zero there to keep it all lined up nicely. So remember, when we add, we bring down our decimal point and then we start adding. So this is 8. This is going to be 8, 9, 10. Bring up my 1. So that's 11, 12, 15. Bring up my 1 and 4. So my answer is going to be 450 and 8/10. So let's look at another problem where we use this procedure. So if I have the problem 52 times 35 hundredths. Let's use a model to solve this. So my step 1 is to turn this into expanded form. So I'm going to start with the 52. I'm going to say 52 is really saying 50 plus 2. And then when I look at the 35 hundredths, that's really saying 3/10 plus 5/10. So now I need to create my model. So my model, I'm going to draw my box, and I have 4 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need 4 squares. I'm going to start with my 52 going down on the sides. I'm going to put 50, and I'm going to give this space 2. And then along the top, I'm going to give my 3/10 and then my 5 hundredths. Now I'm going to start multiplying. I'm going to say in this box here, this is really 50 times 3/10. So really 50 times 3/10, and let's do it on the side here, 50 times 3/10. So I'm going to forget about that decimal point and multiply normal. So 3 times 0 is 0, 3 times 5 is 15. Bring down my Harry Houdini because I have another place value. 0 times 0 is 0, 0 times 5 is 0. My next step is to add them. So I get 0, 5, and 1. Now I need to look to my decimal point in the problem. Here it is, and I have one number behind it. So in my product, I'm going to start with the number furthest on the right. I'm going to underline that and place my decimal point. So my actual answer now is 15. So now I need to do, let's go down to here, 2 times 3/10. So if I'm over here on the side, let's do the work. Let's put 3/10 up top. 3/10 times 2. Remember, I forget about the decimal point till the end. Multiply like normal. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 0 is 0. And then I look for my decimal point. I have my decimal point right here, and I underline any number that comes behind it. Okay, so I have one number there. So I look to my next factor, and it's a whole number. I don't see any decimal points, and I don't see any numbers behind the decimal point. So my answer must have one place value behind the decimal point. So I start with the number that's furthest to the right, I underline it, and I place my decimal points. So my answer here is going to be 6/10. All right, so now I'm moving up here to this box, and I'm going to say 50 times 5 hundredths. So when I do 50 times 5 hundredths, let's write it over here. And I'm going to put the 5 hundredths on top, just because there's more numbers there, times 50. So I forget about the decimal point. 0 times 5 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0. Harry Houdini comes in our placeholder, and he's a 0. So I'm going to cross that off because I'm done with that 0. 5 times 5 is 25. Bring up my 2. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. 5 times 0 is 0. And then I need to add them. 0, 5, 2, 0. Now I need to figure out where my decimal point is. So I don't see a decimal point in my whole number factor. So let's go to the 5 hundredths. I see 1, 2. So my answer is to have 1, 2 decimal points. So I have 2 and 50 hundredths. So then the same thing would be for here. 2 times 5 hundredths. And when I do that, I get 1/10. And my last step is to add them together and to get my answer.